My pregnant sister and her disturbingly creepy boyfriend tried to drag me into their chaotic, manipulative mess, pressuring me to take sides, cover for their lies, and clean up the disaster they created. But I drew a hard line, shut them down completely, and made it clear I refused to play any part in their twisted drama. I relocated to the United States nearly 7 years ago. I have 2 half-sisters from my father's side, each from a different mother. We were quite close, and even though they were not legally recognized, I shared with them a portion of the small inheritance I received from my grandparents, who had left them nothing. 2 years ago, both of my sisters also moved to the U.S. The middle sister, who is 28, let's call her Mary, secured a work visa through a company. The eldest, 30, Karen, not her actual name, obtained a student visa and moved in with me. Since I was already employed and earning a good income, the understanding was that I would cover the household expenses. She was to find a job at the university, as she wasn't permitted to work elsewhere, and that would serve as her spending money. I would handle all bills and groceries. The only thing I requested was some minor assistance with chores. I have a dog and a cat, and I informed her she had no responsibilities while she was focused on school and work. This arrangement worked well initially because I work from home, and my stepfamily often helped maintain my house, largely because I frequently babysit for them. It seemed like a pretty good deal for a student, wouldn't you agree? Apparently it wasn't quite enough. While attending university, Karen met Ken. I knew Ken from my own university days. He was a bit odd, but I considered him harmless. Karen was completely smitten with him. I cautioned her about Ken's questionable reputation on campus, but she dismissed my concerns. She's an adult, so I let it go, with the sole condition that Ken was not allowed at my residence. Then the pandemic hit and my work hours were reduced. Karen's studies were paused, and she lost her campus job. Due to these changes, we moved into a smaller apartment. I took on a second job and did some freelance work on the side. Needless to say, my personal life was non-existent. I was seeing someone, but he was also overwhelmed with work and expenses, so we rarely saw each other during that period. During this time, Karen and Ken seemingly grew closer, and he started appearing at the apartment. Karen wasn't on my lease, but my landlord was very understanding. Ken began making truly inappropriate remarks about me. I'm not a beauty queen. I just have a somewhat exotic appearance, as Ken described it. I'm mixed race from the Caribbean, so I have a blend of features and somehow it all shows. Karen resembles our father more, who was of European descent. In all honesty, Karen is more conventionally attractive. I only appear foreign in this small, intermountain region city. Ken would go out of his way to touch me and was generally intrusive. I managed to mostly stay in my room when he was around or use the excuse that my pets needed a walk. I wasn't sure why, but Karen kept urging me to spend time alone with Ken, saying it would be good for me to bond with my future brother-in-law. They had only been dating for 7 months at that point. Regardless, I didn't care and found ways to avoid it. In November 2020, I secured a better position at my primary job, which allowed me to quit my second job and have more personal time. I reconnected with friends and one of them asked if I was alright. When I inquired why, he informed me that Ken had been telling people he was on the verge of getting me for personal time. I was absolutely not okay with that notion and very loudly declared I'd rather be struck by a train than have anything to do with Ken. Since I live in a small city in the Intermountain region, where most people in the same area know each other, many individuals had text messages or unsettling stories to share with me. That was my breaking point. I returned home and demanded an explanation. They didn't deny it. Ken even stated that Karen had given him permission, implying I was doing them a favor as her sister, as he had a particular fantasy he wished to pursue. I told them both they were repulsive and that Ken needed to leave immediately, or I would contact the authorities. Ken departed with some insults directed my way, and Karen began asserting that she saw no issue, claiming my partner and I were on a break, which was untrue. I informed her that I was not an object for her to barter like property, and that she had 2 weeks to find her own place. I was finished with her. I contacted all my relatives, sending them copies of the text messages I had received, and no one in our family wanted anything to do with Karen. She moved in with Ken a few days later. It took some effort, but I managed to obtain a restraining order against Ken. I couldn't get one for Karen, but they largely vanished from my awareness, apart from a few encounters that were easily resolved by threatening to call 911. Then today happened and I had to suppress my amusement. Mary had been keeping up with Karen, being sisters and all, and she messaged me with an update. Hey, Karen just called me. She's pregnant and Ken kicked her out. I simply stared for a few minutes and replied, "Oh, that's unfortunate." Mary understood and supported my lack of concern or intention to assist Karen. Karen then used Mary's phone to call me. She pleaded for my help, explaining that Mary was only allowing her to stay for a week before moving to another state. She claimed she missed her little sister and had nowhere else to turn. She knew I had family health insurance, as I pay for private health insurance for 2 relatives facing difficulties in health conditions, and suggested I could do something similar for her pregnancy medical bills. She insisted this baby was a blessing, and that I should want to help her raise it, which implied I would cover all expenses. I allowed her to express herself for a good 5 to 7 minutes, then simply said, "Nope." I ended the call. She tried calling again for a while, then stopped when I received a text from Mary saying she had left her phone on the counter, and apologized for the barrage of calls. Most of my family agrees with my stance, even Karen's mother. The only one who disapproves is Karen's aunt. She isn't my aunt by blood, but I've known her for many years and call her that anyway. She had been pressuring me for most of the day. She only ceased when I told her that one more message, and I would show her texts to my stepfather, who happens to be her landlord. I feel a degree of sympathy for the baby, but this is one of those situations where all I can think is, this is not my problem, and these are not my responsibilities. Someone mentioned the regional inconsistency. I never looked into it because I didn't really care. But where I live, I heard Midwest and Northwest used interchangeably. As far as I was concerned, it was the same thing. We don't have those types of regions in my home country. So I decided to Google it while at work and discovered neither was correct. I live in the Intermountain region. Thanks, random stranger, for prompting me to investigate the confusing regional system. Even Google doesn't seem to fully agree on it. A brief explanation regarding my grandparents. They were very traditional and elderly. By the end of their lives, they didn't have much to bequeath, so they chose to give it to their legal grandchildren. My biological father had many children. I may not even know all of them. My grandparents were simply weary of a new grandchild appearing every other year, sometimes with a demanding mother attached. Lastly, Karen's visa. She had an extension due to the pandemic, but that has expired. She is currently overstaying her visa. This is quite common. I have relatives who do it. I don't condone it, but I also had a slight involvement since my stepfather is American. Oh, and her aunt cannot afford to help. She isn't in the US, and life is pretty much rent-free at my mom's old house in our home country. Update 1. Mary contacted me this morning to have brunch and discuss matters concerning Karen. She told me she understood I didn't wish to be involved, but she genuinely wanted everything to be addressed, after which I could simply disengage. I know Mary, and I know she's trying to organize everything before she leaves the state. She's the peacemaker among my siblings. I agreed on the condition that Karen absolutely would not be coming home with me. Mary simply said, "If she tries to follow you, I'll drag her out myself." So I got ready and went to brunch with my sisters. I'll skip the pleasantries and awkward family dynamics. Once we had finished eating and were just having coffee, Mary laid all the cards on the table. She explained she couldn't take Karen with her out of state because she's getting married to her long-term girlfriend, and they can only afford a 1-bedroom apartment in her new city. She also stated that Karen was delusional if she thought Mary would allow her to live with me, even if she had the power to make me take Karen back. She told Karen she was fortunate to have been allowed to stay with her for these past few days. Mary informed her that the only reason we were even having this discussion was because her mother had begged her to at least place Karen somewhere safe or find a solution for the pregnancy. She then turned to me and, as the most financially stable, asked if there was anything I would be willing to assist with. I might be considered harsh for this, so feel free to criticize me, but I essentially said I would only provide funds for 3 things. 1. A termination and a hotel room for her recovery. 2. A ticket back to our home country so she could live with her mother or aunt and access free health care. Or 3. A ticket to our eldest brother's home country so she could live with him, as I knew he would take her in. I also mentioned she had the option to put the baby up for adoption, but I would not be offering her a place to stay or covering medical care out of my own pocket. I provided her with links to nonprofits she could contact. Karen began to cry, claiming I was trying to take away her baby and being a terrible sister. She insisted a good sister would open her home and help care for her baby, and that I never deserved the money I possess. Most of my money comes from my mother's side of the family, so I'm unsure how she would have any claim to it. She then accused me of being spoiled by my mother because she had money. We did have money because after our father abandoned my mother and me with nothing, she built a company from scratch. Karen continued rambling and creating a scene. Then she said something that genuinely hurt me. "You are just upset because you will never get pregnant." Yes, I am infertile. No, I cannot receive treatment for it. It is what it is, I have already accepted it, but it still stings. Mary knew this was a cruel remark and basically told Karen that one more foolish word like that, and she would be sleeping on the street tonight. I didn't cry or react emotionally. I just stared. Karen stopped her crying and muttering and seemed to have an idea. She looked directly at me and told me to adopt her baby. I laughed at that. I told her she was insane if she thought I would adopt her child. I don't want her in my life, let alone her ex. I don't blame the baby, but I have absolutely no intention of being a part of that child's life. I was about to lash out at Karen just for even considering that as an option, but Mary stopped me in time. Mary simply stated to Karen, "You have the options she gave you. Here are mine, you can get a termination or you can go back to our home country. Either way you cannot stay here. You are not legal and your immigration status affects us. If you were to live with us I could lose my job, and the original poster could lose her resident status. You have until next Friday to choose. If none of these options work, you will have to find your own solution without us. I don't want you anywhere near my little sister. You put her at risk of being assaulted or worse. You are lucky I have an empty room for one more week for you to crash in, but after that I don't want to see you in person. We can keep in touch by Facebook or phone. You've lost the right to spend time in person with either of us." I just stared at Mary. She is usually very quiet and the most reserved among us, so this outburst was unexpected. Mary paid the bill, didn't even wait for the change, and left Karen with enough money for a taxi home. Mary grabbed me by the arm and led me out. I didn't realize how much I needed someone to simply protect me for a change, but I did shed a few tears on the way out, purely from relief. I still had an older sister who looked out for me. We decided to go for ice cream afterward, just like we did as kids when bad things happened, and discussed our plans to spend holidays and vacations together. Mary's girlfriend also joined us for ice cream, and the entire time she made jokes about how sad she would be without her moving table, as she's much taller than me, and it's a running gag between us. Nothing too dramatic, thankfully. Mary and her girlfriend are coming over for dinner later, depending on how this situation concludes. I'll try to provide an update, but at this point, I think it's largely resolved. I'm not sure if Karen will choose any of the options we presented, or just pursue her own path. Regardless, I have no intention of spending my money on anything beyond what I stated. And yes, Mary is my hero if anyone was wondering. Small edit 1. I was asked this in a chat and wanted to clarify. Karen is not broke. I gave her $10,000 at the beginning of the year when our grandmother passed away. That was her share of the $30,000 I received. She has also been saving money from her college job. I worked at the university about 4 years ago and was earning $9 an hour. Her mother also sent her money. Unless she squandered all her funds, she won't return home without money. If that were the case, my brothers Mary and I would all contribute something. She might be on my blacklist, but she is my sister after all. Oh, I have a camera system and a guard dog and all my locks have been changed. Short of her climbing through the balcony like Spider-Man, she'll have difficulty getting in. I also work from home and employ a dog walker, so I should be fine. Update 2. My older half-sister Karen has made a choice. The brief version of the events leading to this is, Karen was living rent-free with me when she started dating a rather unsettling individual. Her boyfriend wanted to fulfill a fantasy that involved my sister and me in a very distasteful activity together, and Karen was fully on board and volunteered me without my knowledge. I evicted her. She moved in with him, became pregnant, and then he kicked her out. She wanted me to not only take her in but also essentially support her and her baby. My sister and I presented her with options and stated she would not live with either of us long-term. As I mentioned in my previous post, my sister Mary and I offered Karen a few choices for her unplanned pregnancy. The options were a termination of her pregnancy, a ticket back to our home country, or a ticket to our brother's home country. Alternatively, she could find a way to keep her child or place the baby for adoption. She had until tomorrow to decide since Mary was leaving on Saturday for the East Coast. Well, Karen chose none of the above. She decided to create such difficulties that she is now arrested and more than likely will be deported. Let me explain what transpired. On Tuesday, Mary decided to visit a nearby national park to enjoy it one last time before moving too far to drive there. She left Karen with a key and some money, a significant error. Mary and her girlfriend returned yesterday and discovered all the locks in their house had been changed. To make matters worse, Ken, Karen's supposed ex, had moved into their house. I know Mary should have anticipated this, but they grew up as best friends. They used to be closer to each other than to anyone else, myself included. Naturally, the police were called and it was a complete mess. Karen and Ken claimed it was their house. Mary and her girlfriend repeatedly told them it wasn't, that it wasn't even Mary's house anymore. It had been sold, and the new family who owned it was arriving on Sunday. The realtor was supposed to give them the key. The police officers were already fed up with this situation before it even escalated, and asked everyone for their identification. Ken, Mary, and Mary's girlfriend all had their IDs. Karen only had an expired passport. Karen was arrested on immigration charges. Ken was arrested on charges related to breaking and entering and some others I'm not entirely sure about. I heard this secondhand from Mary while she was on the verge of committing a felony, had it not been for the officer's presence. Today I received a call about my sister. Her lawyer claimed she was asserting to be my surrogate, and that the baby she was carrying was actually my child. Yes, she attempted this. I informed the lawyer that I was not seeking a surrogate or adopting a child, that I am already fostering and have no available space, and that my sister became pregnant accidentally with Ken. He asked if I would be willing to foster her baby since the child would technically be American. I emphatically said no. He tried to work things out with me, explaining my sister would most likely be deported otherwise. I simply told him that if that's the law, then that's how it will be. I asked him to please not contact me about her anymore. As far as I'm concerned, her only family is in our home country. Aside from the scare and new locks, Mary is fine. The realtor has copies of the new keys for the family who owns the house, and now my sister and I plan to have no contact with Karen. I don't know exactly what will happen to Karen, nor do I care anymore. Now, not even her aunt in our home country wants anything to do with Karen and even apologized to Mary and me. As for Ken, who knows? I hope he goes to jail, but if he doesn't, I couldn't care less. I now feel a massive burden has been lifted from my shoulders, and can just concentrate on work and teaching my foster daughter about Star Wars. We have already watched all of the original trilogy, and we have a Clone Wars marathon planned for the weekend. I want to thank everyone who sent well wishes to my sister Mary and me, and also to the people who shared advice that I am so glad I took to heart. This has probably been the worst family upheaval I've dealt with since my parents' divorce, and it came absolutely from the one person I least suspected. I can't say I have any entitled stories apart from this one. Karen was once actually a very good sister, but I suppose when money and comfort are involved, people change. Small update that isn't worth a new post. Karen was offered the option to leave the US willingly, and she will face no negative effects on her status. She called my mom to see if she could persuade me to provide my sister with the money for the ticket. Mary and I agreed to pay for the ticket on the condition she never again contacts either of us. Her mom is aware of this and basically told me that Karen will have to find a job within the month she arrives, or she'll be on the streets. As for lawyers and such, I have my own immigration lawyer aware of the situation, and he told me the only way the surrogate ploy would work would be a DNA match or a contract. Neither of those exists, so I'm safe. Mary booked Karen's trip back for Friday. Good riddance. Update 3. I almost made it a month without hearing from my half-sister, but okay Reddit, you were right. This might never truly be over. Also, amusingly enough, dear sister found my post and sent me a scathing email before I blocked her, but that's not a major story. This one, however, infuriates me. As I posted before, my older half-sister Karen was forcibly, but not truly, removed by immigration after going insane and attempting to claim squatters' rights on a sold house that used to belong to my other half-sister Mary, and she was escorted out. So I know she left. Things were calm for a bit, and in the meantime I focused on my 4-year-old foster daughter, let's call her Lily. Lily's mom is one of my oldest friends. She gave birth in the US, but Lily's father is not American and unfortunately passed away when Lily was a baby. My friend was asked to leave the US to complete her immigration process from outside the country, as she has no one to claim her aside from a minor child. This sadly means she probably won't be able to enter the US until Lily is 18. Because our home country's education system is quite poor, she asked me if I could take Lily. By this point I had already evicted Karen, so I had an extra room. I told her it was acceptable if it was in Lily's best interest. Lily and I are incredibly close, and she has always seen me as her fun, slightly eccentric aunt. It took a little time, but 3 weeks ago, Lily's guardianship was transferred from the state to me, just in time for Halloween too. We are skipping trick-or-treating this year due to the pandemic, but Lily still wanted to dress up as a Sith. I am so proud of this child, I swear. My mom was incredibly happy to have a foster grandchild, especially since Lily doesn't actually have any other grandparents. So, she sent her some rather fancy Star Wars props. Obviously, we got her dressed up in her Sith outfit, and had a mini photo session for Grandma. My mom posted the pictures on Facebook so Lily's mom could easily see them. My family and friends went crazy over how adorable Lily looks. She says she's not adorable, she's a Sith. And then Karen struck back. Mom forgot or decided not to block Karen, and when my half-sister saw Lily's picture, she unleashed some of her worst comments, such as my 4-year-old looking fat, being ugly, and clearly going to grow up to be a word I cannot even write, but it's the word starting and ending with W. That's just a handful. She was called out and politely told to return to the darkness, but then she started calling my mother at all hours to ask for money, to ask how to contact me, and to tell her she was wasting money on a child who wasn't truly her grandchild and should give her the money for her own child. Karen is not my mom's daughter. Eventually, my mom figured out how to block her, and Karen reached me through a school friend. She sent not one, not two, but a 16-page long list of demands, or she would sue me. One demand was getting rid of my foster daughter so I could adopt her baby. Another was an apartment I share with my cousins, left to us by our maternal grandmother, $500,000, my dog and my cat. Oh, and I needed to get her back into the US. There's still more, most of it completely delusional. I sent a copy to my lawyer to try to pursue a no-contact order in the US. I can't do anything in my home country, but I did forward another copy to our relatives, including our eldest brother. He simply told me he would take care of it. For the record, I am not taking Karen's child in, even if I didn't have Lily. Her ex was recently released and has already caused problems for other people. Luckily, he's keeping his distance from me. And to clarify something, Karen isn't penniless. I divided a $150,000 inheritance equally with her and Mary. She also received money from her stepfather when he passed away in our home country. She is actually quite well off. The only reason I never charged her rent or asked her for money was because I knew the tuition price would be very high, and didn't want her to have to take out a loan like I did for a time. Oh, I still have assets in our home country. The apartment, some land my maternal grandpa left me that I share with my cousins since he died before they were born, a bank account, and I'm a partner in my uncle's company. She seems to think my maternal family's property is also property of my father's children, except it isn't. Most of it is premarital property or from after the divorce.